Oil and gas exploitation, as much as any other extraction of minerals, inevitably leads to negative environmental consequences. The consequences of hydrocarbon extraction are significantly different from the consequences caused by the exploitation of soil minerals. Nevertheless, in terms of their overall negative effect, they were not inferior of the processes of ore or coal mining. Let us consider the hydrocarbon extraction impact of the each layers of our planet. The first point to discuss is the lithosphere. Despite the fact that during the oil or gas extraction the rock mass is not encased, the oil, gas and water removal from the beds leads to significant changes in the upper layer of the earth crust, including surface subsidence. For the first time, it was recorded in the oil field Wilmington, California, USA. The deposit extends through the southwest of the city of Los Angeles and through the Bay of Long Beach, reaching the coalest quarters of the same resort town. The deposit was discovered in 1936 and in 1938 became the center of the oil production in California. In 1938, the city residents of Los Angeles and Long Beach felt a fairly tangible earthquake. It was the beginning of the subsidence over the deposit. In the 40s, the intensity of this process intersected in an area of downpunchiness from the boil of formed. Its bottom was just off the crest of the fault. The level of selection per unit area was maximum. In the 60s, the amplitude of subsidence reached 8.7 centimeters. Horizontal displacements appeared in the surface with an amplitude of up by 23 centimeters, directed toward the center of the area. The ground movement was accompanied by earthquakes. 5 quite strong earthquakes were recorded during the period between the 1948 and 1961. The ground literally crumbled under the feet. The piers, pipelines, urban buildings, highways, bridges, and oil wells were slowly destroyed. Into 1951, the subsidence rate reaches its maximum in 81 centimeters per year. The threat of land sinking appeared. By 1954, it was provided that the most effective way to combat subsidence is to inject the water into reservoir. The first stage of work of water injection was started in 1958, when almost 6,000 cubic meters of water per day began to pump into reservoir at the southern wing of the structures. Eventually, the measures taken allowed practically to stop the process of deformation of the surface in the densely populated region of oil production. Recently, we can hear about the subsidence of the bottom of the North Sea within the Ekofisk field after extraction of 172 million tons of oil and 112 billion cubic meters of gas from the bowels. It was accompanied by deformations of the wells and the offshore platforms themselves. The consequences are difficult to predict, but their catastrophic nature is obvious. Surface subsidence and technogenic earthquakes occur in the oil production regions of Russia. It's especially true among the Starogroslinska field. In April 1988, the earthquake was registered in Tatarstan. According to local experts, there is a direct relationship between the increased pumping of oil from the bowels of the small earthquake's activation. The incidents of breakage of well bores and crushing of the columns are documented. In all these cases, one of the most effective measures is also the injection of water into the reservoir that compensates the oil extraction. The oil can be spared over during its extraction or transportation, which was extremely negative impact of the soil cover. Among the main consequences can be noted: changes in abundance of the species diversity of plants and animals, as well as their limitation. Most of the species of soil animals completely disappear or account for not more than 1% in the 3 days after the accident. The light oil fractions of the most toxic of them. During the decomposition of oil products in the ground, the total number of microorganisms approached the ground values, but the number of oil oxidizing bacteria for a long time exist the same groups of in pollution soils, for example, South Taiga 10-20 years. Processes of photosynthesis of plants in particular causes change. Experiments have shown that the conditions of the southern taiga at high doses of contamination, more than 21 per square meter, the plants can be developed normally of the contaminated soils even a year later. It should also be noted that natural processes of soils is contaminated were slow. Next point to consider is the impact of soil and gas extraction to the atmosphere. The most acute problem of the global level today is the utilization of acidic petroleum gas. Acidic petroleum gas is the mixture of various gaseous hydrocarbons dissolved in oil, allocated in the processes of extraction and preparation of oil. Acidic petroleum gas include methane, ethane, propane, butane, and isobutane, as well as dissolved high molecular liquids from pentas and above, of different composition that phase state. In Russia, as in any other oil-producing country, the problem of acidic petroleum gas utilization has a silent ecological aspect. Up to 30% of all industrial emissions of pollutants are the oil and gas sector of the economy. In general, the emissions of the oil industry enterprises of the atmosphere are 12%. In the processes of acidic petroleum gas burning, such substances as carbon black products of incomplete combustion of the hydrocarbons, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen oxides enter the atmosphere. Combustion of acidic petroleum gas is the main source of environmental pollution in oil production areas. The environment and the population are exposed to environmentally harmful combustion products. The environmental consequences of oil reserves development affect, first of all, the regional level. This aspect of economic activity is the most vulnerable and difficult to perceive due to the accumulated complex nature of impact. Some of the gases contained in the individual deposits also have a negative impact of the environment. In recurrence operative consideration in exploration, well operation and line facilities. So, in particular, the content of sulfur compounds in the gas of the lower Volga is so great that the cost of sulfur is a commodity product obtained from the gas pays for the cost of the purification. It is an example of the apparent cost effectiveness of implementing environmental technology. Pollution of the surface layer of the atmosphere during oil and gas production also occurs during accidents, mainly by natural gas. Oil evaporation products, ammonia, ethylene, and combustion products. Unlike the central part of the country, air pollution in the far north regions, which other things begin equal, has a stronger impact of the nature due to its reduced regenerative capacity. The water basins of the planet are polluted recklessly. Annually from 2 to 10 million tons of oil and discharged of the world ocean is the reason or another. Optical photography from satellites recorded that almost 30% of the surface of the ocean is covered from oil film. Especially the waters of the Mediterranean Sea, the Atlantic Ocean and shores are polluted. All pollution from local zones remain stable in time, therefore ocean calculation plays an important role of their distribution. They transfer all pollution of the cleanest areas of the world ocean, including the Arctic Ocean. The main reasons of the massive oil spill into the world ocean, the accidents during the transportation oil, as well as accidents of the offshore platforms. In both cases, a huge amount of oil enters in the natural environment. Today, scientists in many countries are developing technologies to collect oil from the surface of the seas and oceans, as well as various systems preventing oil products bottling during extraction and transportation. To conclude the lecture, some aspects related to restoration of the territories where hydrocarbons were previously produced are considered. Measures to return disturbed lands to economic turnover are called recultivation, which is a complex of environmental measures aimed at improving environmental conditions, restoring economic productivity and land value. It should be noted that the land recultivation must be carried out after the mineral resources, mining as well as after geological exploration. It's certain the concept of recultivation comes from mining industry, since the mine workings appear earlier and occupy much larger territories. In some European countries, the minerals are no longer produced, but their many exhaust mining enterprises are still remained as separate science in development called post-mining. The following ways of reclamation disturbed in results of mining are distinguished: agriculture, with the purpose of creating agricultural lands of disturbed owners; forestry, creation of forest plantations of various types; fishery, creation of fish-breeding reservoirs; hydroeconomic, creation of water basins of various purposes in the depressions of the technogenic reliefs; recreation, creation of recreation facilities; constructional, bringing their disturbed lands into a condition subsidiary of industrial and civil construction; subsidiary and hygienic, with the purpose of biological technical conservation of distributed lands, which have a negative impact on the environment. Most of these ways are practically feasible for oil and gas wells. Therefore, as a rule, after the end of production, the areas are adapted for agricultural, forestry, or construction needs. In general, the following basic requirements are set of the project of recultivation of oil and gas production fields. First, to create a landscape that blends harmoniously with the surrounding environment. Second, to prevent surface runoff of the soil erosion as well as local deformations in the future. Third, to ensure optimal conditions for forest culture's survival and development. Recultivation is usually carried out in technical and biological stages. The technical stage of recultivation involves the land preparation of their future use in the national economy. It involves land leveling, removal, transportation and application of soils to the recultivated land. The purpose of technical recultivation is the combination of disturbed lands with the surrounding landscape by carrying out appropriate work. The biological stage of land recultivation includes measures of their fertility restoration carried out after technical recultivation. Its goal is the planning of disturbed lands of the complete restoration of their original biological potential. The processes of biological recultivation ends only if when the humus of the new soil meets the condition of normal growth of planted plants. However, the magnitude of this concentration has not been established to date due to the complex of unstable chemical composition of the oil, and it's unlikely to establish obviously. All of different deposits and even different layers of the deposit vary significantly in chemical composition, and since carcinogenic and mutagenic substances contained in oil and unstable at very small concentrations, which practically do not affect the productivity of the first generations of green plants, are the main danger due with the fertility of lands is usually esteemed. The talk of establishing a biologically safe level of oil pollution is extremely difficult. In actual production conditions, the actual purpose of recultivation work is only to reduce the context of oil and oil products in the oil to the conditional limit at which the development group the reduction of green plants is possible, as the achievement of the recultivated area close the origin one in terms of the plant covering. It should be also noted that the extraction of oil and gas is associated with the extraction of a large amount of sands and clay, which are used in the construction of drill floors, as well as pipelines. In this regard, it is necessary to remember that the need to restore of territories of their mine workings. In conclusion, it should be noted that the extraction of any minerals of the process that adversely affects the environment. Generally, in the most catastrophic emissions of harmful substances occur in emergency situation. Their main causes are sudden changes in the external environment, for example, nature disasters, technology mistakes, and the lack of information about the structure and geological conditions of the deposit. But the most common cause of the accidents is the human factor. In the 21st century, mankind began to pay more attention to the protection of the environment. The issues of environmental protection, the global and the extent of mankind on the planet depends on their solution. The materials of the article, Causes and Effects of Oil Spills by V.L. Weaver, were used in the process of lecture preparation.